Ravens flock. They did it again. Like, these bastards did it again. They did it again. We all know what happened. You saw what happened. We drafted Malaki Starks with the 27th overall pick. I would have liked him a lot more if he was a second round pick. I really wanted us to get him in the second round. If we got him on day 2, I would have been ecstatic. Or just any safety on day 2, because I do believe that there's plenty of good safeties that are and would still be available on day 2. But yet we're the only team that feels this weird need to pick up safeties in the first round. When you look around at all these other teams, nobody's doing that. Why? Because you could get a good safety on day 2. And yet the Ravens will still reach. And yes, in my opinion, this is 1000% a reach in the first round for a guy who's not going to make any difference on this team in his first year. You know, I don't care how talented you or I or anybody else thinks Malaki is. When we get to January, Malaki is not going to matter. See, when we get to January and Derrick Henry can't run through any gaps because Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Faalele suck, Malaki Starks ain't gonna matter. Malaki Starks ain't gonna matter. Not just because he's not an offensive lineman, but also because when the defense gets on the field, he won't make a difference. He's not gonna turn the ball over. Again, in 7 years, the Ravens defense has only produced 3 turnovers in the playoffs. Meanwhile, you look at some of these other teams, like the Eagles, they produced 18 in that same time span. The Chiefs have produced more or less 20 in that time span. The Bills produced 12. The 49ers produced 13. And yet, we keep reaching at some of these positions that are no longer as relevant as they were 20 years ago. And it's not making a difference because who on this defense can make a turnover when it matters? I'm positive Malaki will not make a difference in January. I say that so confidently is because Kyle Hamilton's better than him, and Kyle Hamilton doesn't even make a difference when we get to January. It's been what, 4 years now, and the most notable thing Kyle has ever been a part of in the playoffs is giving up a touchdown to Travis Kelce in the AFC Championship game. Outside of that, you can't name anything Kyle has done in January that has actually made a difference and given us a better chance to win. And when I say make a difference, I'm talking about making a play. And when I say make a play, I mean turning the ball over. Because that's the elephant in the room that we keep trying to duck and dodge when it comes time to talk about the Ravens coming up short in these playoff games. And it's very frustrating to see. We needed a guard. I wanted a guard. I wanted Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel was gone. We didn't trade up, which we're not surprised by, but it didn't happen. We didn't trade up. I wanted Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel was gone. I wanted Tyler Booker. Tyler Booker was gone. I wanted Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson was gone. I wanted Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons was gone. I would have been cool with Josh Connerly. Josh Connerly was gone. Well, actually, Josh Simmons and Josh Connerly were not gone, actually. They were there for us, but we just passed on them to go get a safety. So I'm very curious what people's definition of best player available is, because I 100% believe that a player's immediate impact, especially in the first round specifically, should be factored into the concept of best player available. And as far as what we desperately need, we needed offensive linemen, specifically guards. We didn't need another safety. You literally have arguably the best safety in football, and then a guy in Kyle Hamilton, and then a guy in Darius Washington who has developed into a pretty solid sidekick, as well as 2 draft picks from just a year ago. You had more than enough safeties. You had 2 starting caliber guys, and then you had 2 guys who, if these coaches were good at their job, these guys would already be developed and ready to go in year 2. and you instead opted to go get another safety. Meanwhile, we don't have any guards that anybody can feel confident about. It doesn't matter that Faalele made the Pro Bowl. You and me and all of us all know that that was fraudulent. McCary's gone, and even when McCary was here, McCary sucked as a starter. McCary was a solid depth piece, but as far as starting, McCary sucked. Andrew Voorhees sucked. He was an injured 7th round rookie who many people were trying to act like was so valuable, and guess what? He sucked. Another reason I wanted to get Malaki Starks on day 2 instead of day 1 is because there's multiple safeties who we could have gotten on day 2 who will probably have a similar impact as Malaki. And what I mean is, you could get Andrew Mukuba, you could get Jalen Reed, you could get Xavier Watts, you could get Kevin Winston. And many of those guys, several of those guys will probably have similar impact. We're the only team that still prioritizes reaching this high for a safety, whereas the rest of the league isn't doing that, and there's plenty of teams that still have good safeties. Even the year we drafted Kyle Hamilton, the Lions didn't reach to get a safety. They just waited till the 2nd round and they picked up Brian Branch. And whether Ravens fans want to accept it or not, Brian Branch is another elite safety who's arguably just as good as Kyle. So we reached to get a guy in Malaki who, when it gets to January, it won't matter what he does. Because we all know once we get to January, he's not going to make a difference. And nobody's going to really ask of him to make a difference. It's just going to be like, whatever. Oh, what do you want him to do? Oh, the offense has to do better. Well, invest more in the offense. We literally have the cheapest offensive line in football. And that's not a flex. That's not a good thing. It would be a good thing if we had a good offensive line, but we have 2 garbage guards. So that makes it look embarrassing. We could have gone guard. We could have drafted a tackle and then moved him to guard for a couple years. Another reason I wanted Gray Zabel is because just in case they don't want to pay Tyler Linderbaum, Gray Zabel, on top of playing guard and having some experience at tackle, he also has some experience playing center. So maybe we could have moved him to center if they didn't want to pay Tyler Linderbaum. Because with the Ravens' tendencies right now and how cheap they're trying to be on offense, I don't know if we're paying Tyler Linderbaum. They're probably going to let him walk, to be honest with you. I'm not too excited about this pick. I think he's still going to be a good player, but I'm just not fond of how this went. There were guys that we needed to get, guards that we needed to get. Even with because I've seen people say that they don't think we should worry about getting guard in the 1st round because guards don't go in the 1st round and it's a bad idea to draft them that high, blah, blah, blah. But yet you look around, there were 3 guards that went by the 20th pick, more or less. Tyler Booker was gone at 12. Gray Zabel was gone at 18. And then Donovan Jackson was gone by the early 20s. But y'all think that we're going to find some guards on day 2 or day 3? There's nobody else. When it comes to guys who would realistically have a chance to compete for starting spots and be able to be impactful, competent offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen, there's really nobody else besides maybe Tate Ratledge. Everybody else, it's a coin toss. And so, what are we just going to sit back and hope that we go get Tate Ratledge? We're not getting Tate Ratledge. At the pace things are going, Tate Ratledge isn't going to be available at 59. So that idea, just throw that out the window. So what are you going to do at guard? Nothing. This is why you needed to prioritize getting it in the 1st round. There's only a handful of guards who realistically are going to be ready to perform at a high level right now. Whereas on the flip side, there's a gang of safeties who can be a 3rd safety on a defense. There's a gang of safeties who are available today, tomorrow, and the next day who will be just as competent as the number 2 or number 3 safety. Even if you didn't want to go guard, maybe go defensive tackle. If they got Derek Harmon, I wouldn't be that mad about that. Michael Pierce just retired. Travis Jones is probably leaving next year because they can't afford to pay Travis and Madubuike. So if they would have went and got Derek Harmon or traded up to get Derek Harmon, I wouldn't necessarily be mad at that. Even if they had gotten Donovan Izaraku, I wouldn't have been mad at that. But you prioritize a safety. Why? Because you think it's 2002. You think it's still 2002. Safeties do, and I'm not saying safeties don't matter at all, but safeties don't have the same, they don't carry, their value doesn't carry the same weight as it did in 2002. And even if you think that they do, none of these safeties are Ed Reed. I can guarantee you Malaki Starks will never be Ed Reed, and neither will Kyle Hamilton. I think we've missed a major opportunity to really make this offensive line more solid because it's already cheap. But at the very least, if we could have gotten some quality guys on rookie contracts, that would be exciting. But we don't have any. We don't have any quality starters at guards. And on top of that, we don't even have depth at guards, honestly. There's no plan for guards because here's the thing. Daniel Faalele's up for contract. And as much as y'all want to pretend like he's decent, as much as John Harbaugh wants to pretend like he's decent, Daniel Faalele sucks. So they're not going to pay him. They're not paying him $20 million just for him to be for him to move like his feet are stuck in frozen molasses. Come on, man. You think they're going to pay him $20 million a year for that? He's out of here after this season. He's gone. So you're not even preparing for the future. Tyler Linderbaum's up for contract. And to be honest with you, with how cheap they are on offense, I don't have faith that they're signing Tyler Linderbaum. So you also don't have a long-term answer at center either. Andrew Voorhees sucks. You don't have an answer at the other guard position. There's massive question marks on your offensive line when you've had multiple opportunities over the past several years to easily fix this. If we would have brought back Kevin Zeitler, I wouldn't even care. I'll be like, whatever, do what you want. But they didn't want to sign Kevin Zeitler. And Kevin Zeitler still has a lot left in the tank, and he signed for a cheap deal. Last year and this year, they still didn't want to bring it. They still didn't want to bring him back. In theory, could we find a really good player in the second round to make up for this? Maybe. But is that person going to be a real difference maker? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. What I do know is we could have traded up to go get a guy like Matthew Golden, because Matthew Golden was sitting right there at 23. We picked at 27. You can't tell me realistically you can't trade up 4 spots. It's ridiculously easy to trade up 4 spots. And you couldn't trade up 4 spots to get a guy who is potentially not only the fastest receiver in the class, but a guy who is arguably the true best receiver in this class. You didn't want to go trade up to get him. You didn't want to trade up to get Derek Harmon. You didn't want to trade up to get Gray Zabel. Instead, you wanted to trade up to... Instead, you didn't want to trade at all. You just sat back and picked a safety. And then you let Josh Conerly and Josh Simmons go to the Commanders and the Chiefs. All Josh Simmons has to do this year is play fairly competent. On a scale of 1 to 10, all Josh Conerly has to do this year is play at a 6. And that alone would immediately outweigh whatever Malaki Starks is going to do this year. Because again, realistically, guys, I know you may like the potential of Malaki, but realistically, what is Malaki going to do this year? What is he going to do? He's not going to be our best safety. Kyle Hamilton's still on the team. What, maybe he takes Ardarius Washington's place? Okay, I mean, that's cool, but when we get to January, how relevant is that going to be? How relevant is his position on the team going to be? Because when we get to January, we need, on the defensive side of the ball, we need difference makers. And as good as he may be, are you really expecting him to make a difference? And if he does, I would have no problem coming back on this channel and just saying I was wrong. But I haven't been wrong in like several years when it comes to this. Like every time we turn around in the playoffs, this defense is a non-factor. We have a bunch of high draft picks as well as highly paid players on every level of this defense. And meanwhile, when we get to January, these guys don't matter. And that's a problem to me with the first round pick, because with a first round pick, we need guys who actually make a difference, guys who matter. And I have zero faith in Malaki being that. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player. I think he could be a great player. He'll probably look amazing in week 8. He'll probably look amazing in week 12. But when we get to January, is Malaki Starks going to make a difference? I have a hard time believing he will, because we already have a superior safety on the team who, even when we get to the playoffs, even he doesn't make a difference really. So we'll see, man. Let me know, do you like Malaki Starks? I'm sure many of you do. I like him too. Like I said, I just wish we didn't get him in the first round. I see his biggest comp has been Jesse Bates, which I like Jesse Bates a lot. I know he played for the Bengals, but I really like Jesse Bates. So, I mean, that's a good comp to have. So we'll see what he can do. But let me know, do you think this guy will actually make a difference in January when we need him to make a difference?